Topping today's news, the Bahamas and Canada trade mission gets underway at Bahama. A man shot and killed by an off-duty police officer in Angliston. The government reduces VAT on unprepared food items to 5%, and the official opposition not impressed with the government's midterm fiscal performance. Good evening, Bahamas. This is your JCN Evening News. I'm Jarino Saunders. What's better than a good business relationship? When you can reap the benefits of that relationship, and the Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation is doing just that. On Thursday, the Bahamas Canada Innovation Trade Mission 2025 officially got underway at Bahamas Convention Center. Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Chester Cooper, speaks about the continuous growth that will occur from the long-standing partnership between the Bahamas and Canada.
So we are a small country of 400,000 people, but we have big ambitions. We have long been a country whose economy is pegged significantly on tourism. We've been blessed with a great financial services industry, bolstered, I would say, by Canadian institutions like Royal Bank and Scotia and CIBC and others. And we have now determined that we must continue to build new pillars to create employment, create opportunities for our youth, and to create entrepreneurial ventures to create wealth for our young people and not so young.
Mr. Cooper also touched on topics of our digital finance sector that turned around after complications with FTX.
We have been pioneers in the advancement of blockchain, digital assets, cryptocurrencies, etc. And whilst many remember FTX, I want to tell you that the Bahamas' digital assets business is so much more. I was also very curious last week when I had the opportunity, along with Senator Barry Griffin, to listen to President Trump speak in Florida at the Future Investment Initiative. He announced his ambition for Miami to become the crypto capital of the USA. It was interesting for me because I already thought that the Bahamas, and NASA in particular, has already established its reputation as the crypto capital of the Americas. And I am delighted that we are pioneering in this space.
The two-day event is designed to expand trade ties between the Bahamas and Canada in an effort to increase the exportation of goods from the Bahamas to Canada. The Bahamas is Canada's second largest trading partner here in the Caribbean region. A man was shot and killed by an off-duty police officer while in the Angliston community on Wednesday evening. Police say the incident began in the area of Palm Beach Street and Homestead Avenue when the officer observed a male firing a weapon. The officer identified himself as a police, but the suspect fired at the police officer, who produced his service weapon and returned fire. The suspect ran south on Palm Beach Street, which led to a chase. When the police say the suspect stopped and engaged the officer and again began firing his weapon in the direction of the officer, who again returned fire, fatally wounding the suspect. Police Press Liaison Officer Sharia King said the deceased was unidentified at the time and appears to be in his mid-20s. She said an illegal firearm was recovered from the victim, who collapsed near the New Mission Baptist Church. His Majesty's coroner is leading the investigation into this first police-involved shooting for the year. In 2023, there were 12 police-involved shootings, with 5 individuals being fatally wounded. With food items becoming more and more expensive, the government has taken another step to make certain food items more affordable for Bahamian families. While introducing the mid-year budget communication on Wednesday, Prime Minister Philip Davis announcing plans to reduce value-added tax on certain categories of food items.
I will be tabling an amendment to the VAT Act This will take effect from the 1st of April 2025. to reduce the VAT rate on unprepared food from the current rate of 10% to a new rate of just 5%. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this amendment to the VAT rate will only apply to entities whose primary businesses is the sale of unprepared food. This will include grocery, convenience stores, and gas stations. However, this will not include restaurants. To be clear, this also applies to the importation of unprepared food.
Mr. Davis said for clarity, the amended act will include the list of food items that will attract the 5% VAT rate, and that April 1st was chosen to allow food merchants time to adjust their prices and systems and to ensure a smooth transition for businesses and consumers. The Prime Minister said the reduction will not have a negative impact on the government's revenue generation. He explains why.
This adjustment to the VAT rate on unprepared food will not impact, and I repeat, it will not impact our ability to achieve our fiscal targets, as I've mentioned before. We have worked hard to shift more of the tax burden to those who can best afford it. As I outlined, the introduction of the corporate income tax for multinationals who operate in the Bahamas and who have more than 750 million euros in annual revenue was one important step in that direction. In addition, instead of imposing major new taxes on Bahamians, we are working hard to collect more of the VAT already owed by larger companies.
Mr. Davis said the government is also improving real property tax compliance to offset any possible loss in revenue due to this reduction. Meanwhile, unimpressed and not buying into the sweet talk of the Davis administration's mid-year budget performance, this from opposition leader Michael Pintard, who spoke to the media after the Prime Minister's presentation of the mid-year budget, suggesting that the country is on good economic footing and heading in the right direction. That was the Prime Minister. Well, to the contrary, Mr. Pintard says the government has failed on multiple levels.
Failed to provide relief for the cost of living, failed to provide a pathway for sustainable economic growth and development, and failure to show how they have governed in a fiscally responsible manner and how they have been transparent with what they do with your money. What was the reason and justification for a $192 million increase in the recurrent expenses? Was this spike in spending to finance more than $300 million in no-bid contracts the Davis administration has reported over the last 12 months?
The opposition described the budget communication as smoke and mirrors. Mr. Pintard said the opposition feels as though the government has not done enough to ease the cost of living for the average Bahamian. And finally, in this segment, the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources launched their Red Dawn operation a few weeks ago. It is an operation that enforces the protection of Bahamian waters and our marine life. The Bahamas is not a place where people can raid our seas, says Minister of Marine Resources Jomo Campbell. He was at a press conference earlier this week. He said his ministry will continue to be on the side of the Bahamian people and will aggressively enforce the maritime laws.
Safety of the vessel and the protection of our natural resources. Any operator who fails to comply with these regulations are subject to legal action. Let me be clear. The protection of our marine resources is non-negotiable, and we are sending a clear and resolute message that the Bahamas is not a place where people can raid our seas. Any foreign entity that seeks to exploit our waters will be held accountable, just as our Bahamian fishermen would be held accountable in any other foreign jurisdiction. To our law-abiding local fishermen, we hear you, we stand with you, and we will continue to act on your behalf.
Minister Campbell also commends Bahamian seamen and other residents that remain vigilant of people that try to break the laws and do not respect the Bahamas' marine resources.
To those who believe that they can operate outside the law, please take this as a warning. We will use every tool at our disposal, from strategic operations to utilizing technological advancements, in order to ensure that our marine resources are protected today and for future generations. We extend our deepest gratitude to all of the agencies involved in Operation Red Dawn, as well as to the Bahamian public, whose vigilance and commitment to protecting our waters remains an invaluable asset. Thank you, and rest assured that we will never waver in our duty to defend and preserve our national heritage.
The Bahamas has continued to face challenges from foreign poachers and other commercial fishermen. However, with the newly implemented Operation Red Dawn, the ministry hopes to minimize such activity. You're listening to JCN News. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back following these commercials.